everyone. I'm here today with Jake Catterall, who's just completed one of the most amazing challenges I've ever heard, 5,000 kilometers from Norway down to Spain. First of all, how do you feel?
Yeah, I honestly, running for that long just feels so weird. And I'm now feeling like I have to kind of integrate back into society.
Brilliant. So before we start, can you just give us a brief introduction about how you got into long distance and endurance running?
Oh, yeah. So I've been working. So I'm actually English, and I studied in Lincolnshire, and then I went on an internship to Amsterdam to live there, and then basically never came back. So I worked in marketing for, yeah, I think 7 years, and for a big period of that, I really put a lot of time and focus into that career, and maybe a little bit too much. But I kind of realized in that sphere and in that career, I I I noticed something about myself, which was this person who could always just keep coming back, like without any major like burnout or like mental issues that are very problematic in our time. And I was like, you know what? If I just sharpen my tools a little bit on this skill, then maybe I could do something really cool with it. Like maybe it's sport or whatever. And sport's always been a part of my life. Like I've always liked to run. My dad's a marathon runner as well, more enthusiast than like professional. Um, so that's basically where I got like the bug from. But as soon as I applied it into endurance and into like any kind of sport, actually, so it wasn't just running, it was also cycling as well. I was natural at it. So my first big event was actually I cycled from Amsterdam to Berlin in one ride. And that when I arrived in Berlin, I realized that like I'm really onto something here.
Oh wow, it's like a pure sense of resilience. You've kind of found that you've got this real sense of resilience to you, and it's
Yeah.
really great to kind of see somebody so early on in their career kind of find that little spark in them.
Yeah.
Especially because when you get to endurance running, you normally find we're at the higher end of the age spectrum. So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing that you've kind of already caught onto this like so early on in your running career.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the first kind of run that I took seriously on like a more longer distance. So I was more into kind of like casual, normal styles. So like 5, 10, 20 marathon distances. And I remember running my first 60K and I ran it at like 4:46 or 4:45 average per kilometer. And I was like, wow, like how did I even do that? That was it. It was such a mind-opening experience for me. But of course, when I finished, I was like, I could have gone way further and I could have done this differently. And like I really started to focus on like all the areas of improvements I could have made. Yeah, and then it all kind of just exploded from there.
Amazing. So what drew you to take on the Norway to Spain challenge? What inspired you to take that on?
Yeah, so like again, I don't want to call it like a quarter life crisis in my kind of marketing world, but it sort of was one. And I was asking a lot of big questions of like, where do I want my life to go? Like, who are my mentors? Like, where am I getting my inspiration from? And I guess the real answer was like, I didn't have any mentors and I didn't really have any targets or dreams. And then I asked everyone around me about their mentors and dreams, and I found out that they also did not have any of those things. So I'm just really like surrounded by people who are just making up life as they go along. And I then found out that everyone is also making up life as they go along. So I was like, everyone's like lost and like I need a kind of edge to try and get myself through. And I saw a bunch of adventurers who were doing like Antarctic crossings, and I was very inspired by it because it was a solo event. It was like harsh weather conditions and like really a testament to what the human body can go through, and that inspired me like no end. So I have a director friend, he's into film, and I told him about this particular journey in Antarctica. And he just, on a kind of whim, was just like, mate, you should just just document like now, like document everything from like today, like how you want to kind of get towards that goal. And maybe you could make like a really cool piece of film about it. And like maybe someone could learn a little bit about like your steps and the steps that you took to get there. And I was like, okay, that sounds really fun. And that was just a small idea, but then it kind of blossomed very fast into me making a documentary series for every one of my events that I create. So I basically want to just create like um a sort of like blueprint for people to also take on their own missions, and see it visually, like see how I did it, not necessarily to go to Antarctica, but like just have some sort of map because I feel like I was neglected of that when I was like thinking of my idea.
Yeah. Wow, that's so inspiring, honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
and the documentary is called Way Beyond, which is actually called that's what I called the project. And specific, sorry, I realized I didn't actually answer your question, which was about how did I get the idea. So part of this series, I ran for 200 kilometers. That was the first episode, a real test of endurance. I also did that in 40-degree temperature, which was very, very challenging. I then went on to cycle a lap of Iceland, a complete lap of Iceland, so non-stop. I was awake for 3 days, and
wow.
that was very, very hard. And I'm supposed to now go into more Arctic territories, but I struggled to get the funding for that for this project. So I was kind of sparring with my girlfriend about like what I should do next and something I can take hold of now. And I made a joke to her that I'd like to run the whole length of the Netherlands, and she went, "Yeah, it's kind of boring." And I was like, Okay, well, maybe I have to think about this." And then she was like, I was like, okay, well, maybe I want to run the whole of the Netherlands all the way to the south of Spain. And she was, no, sorry, south of France. And she was like, yeah, still like missing something still. And I'm like, lady, this is like thousands of kilometers. Like, what more do you need? And then as a joke, I just said to her, like, well, at this point, I might as well just run across the whole length of Europe. And she went, oh, well, that sounds a bit big and scary. And I was like, that's the one.
That's the one. That's the one that captures everybody's attention. So
Yeah.
tell me kind of about when you were out there. What was a typical day like for you?
Yeah. So a typical day, listen, you have to prepare yourself for almost a double marathon every day, right? So 70 kilometers, it's a mammoth task each day, and you sort of have to break it down into sections. And we did it into kind of like 10 or 15-kilometer blocks. Like that's basically how we targeted and how we planned the day. So where the car would be at a certain place, um, what kind of food we would have at each stop as well. So basically, um, and that was just the running part. And then, of course, we then had to create content each day to order to like kind of promote ourselves and also document ourselves as we went.
Mm.
So a typical day basically was like 7:30 start, wake up, and then running by 9 o'clock. The running day would finish always just before 7 p.m. So that was like the stopping and starting and planning or whatever. And then 2 hours of content creation, including of like dinner time and trying to find a place to sleep because we were sleeping in a van. So we just park up anywhere. And then posting for an hour and then basically bedtime by 11 o'clock. And we did this every day,
Wow.
every single day. So it was like that was the schedule every single day. And we would only be delayed by like group runs or not finding a place to park the van, which was a challenge sometimes.
So your crew then, who was your crew?
Yeah, the crew. The older I've become, the more I've just, look, the British and Netherlands winters, it's just getting too much for me. Like, it's so dark and miserable. I think even in the UK, it's a bit more fun because there's like, at least there's a bit more of a Christmas vibe, and there's like forests and stuff that are a bit closer. But it's not really like that in the Netherlands. It's not celebrated in the same way. So I just spend my time in Cape Town. I just it's sunny and beautiful and lovely. And I met a guy out there, a photographer, who we just shared the trail with, actually. We met at a birthday party. And every time I went back there, he would always be like, "Hey, let's go for a swim or go for a trail run." And then we were thinking about who could be the person who joins me on this event. And I was thinking about it, and his name just came up as the first person who could potentially join. I gave him a call and was like, "Look, man, this is going to be a bit of a crazy conversation, but brace yourself." And then I just told him the whole idea and everything, and he practically agreed on the phone and was just like, "I'm gonna have to clear this with the missus, but like, I'm sort of in already."
That brings me to my next question. How did it fare with, your own relationship? You were gone from August to November. What was that
Yeah.
kind of like being away from her for so long?
Yeah, well, we're like we're the byproduct of the COVID disaster, me and my partner. So like our relationship was like come together in a very intimate way, very fast. You know, we
Mm,
moved in together quite quick. So actually being separated has not been something that we've done really. We've
mm.
always been a part of each other's lives. So yeah, to be away for 3 months was actually quite tough. And also, I said to her like, "Well, I'm going to call you every night," which I did. But it's such an intense trip, you know. Like you're so focused on your legs falling off, and like I need to have food at this point. If I get too cold, then like it takes me an hour to warm up, and yeah. So it kind of meant that like it was always all about the run on the phone calls, and I was fully aware of that as well. But it was just kind of like that was just how the trips had to be. And also, you know, someone might just bang on the side of the car door and say, you know, you need to get off my drive, like you're not allowed to park here. So I'm like midway through saying like, okay, but how was your day? And then all of a sudden we're getting told to leave, and it's sorry, babe, I've got to go. And you know, that puts a lot of pressure on our relationships. And the same with Roy, like he had the exact same hurdles. You know, it's like it seems like one of these trips is like, hey, it's just a guy running, and then you go to the van and everything chills. But it really wasn't like that. It was just complete chaos, like always.
Well, you were obviously balancing not only this incredible run, you've got all your injuries, you've got thinking about when we do long runs, I'm thinking about nutrition and running and shoes and how am I feeling, do I need to sleep, and then on top of that you've also got this entire documentary that you're filming as well, that you can't just
Yeah.
sit back and be like, you guys just do that.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
was balancing that injury and work essentially?
Yeah, well, you know, the documentary, so we did kind of have like a kind of target time for this whole run as well. We tried to make it, we kind of packaged it as like a 75 kilometers per day, 75 days situation. That was like the initial target. And as I started the run, I realized that those extra 5 kilometers were like very challenging to do additionally. And you might think, well, he just ran 70, so you might as well just throw in an extra five. But that was really hard for me. So I decided, you know what? This kind of target time and this pressure that I've put on myself, because that's part of your question is like, how do you deal with your own pressures that you put on yourself and your own targets and wishes and dreams? Well, I just kind of was like, look, this is just my story now. Like, it's not like that was just an idea, but in reality, like I can only do what I can do, you know? So, um, that was happening. And then I got a pretty hefty injury on like week two, which was like, it put me out for 5 days. And that
Mm.
was really hard to deal with mentally because I wanted to continue the project. But of course, I have all these other things. I have sponsors who want me to keep going. I have my team who want me to keep going. I have me to keep going. But then I just thought, you know what? Actually, there's something quite valiant in someone taking a break for 5 days, fixing themselves, and then getting back on the horse and then completing the run. So I
Mm.
was actually quite like, you know what? Like the other stuff is just conceptual. Like this is my story now. My story is making it through a run where I got severely injured and continued and finished anyway.
Amazing. What sort of what were you eating then throughout, and your kit? What sort of things were you carrying?
Well, the food was I described it as well, Roy also described it as somewhere between a children's party, a bakery, and an Italian restaurant. Like that was basically the stock of the car at all times. So it was like there was a lot of sweets, gummies, chocolates, milkshakes. Chocolate milkshake was a big one because drinkable calories was uh, one of the key parts to like me not wasting away, basically. And I'm not really like a big fan of calorie counting, but we became very focused on buying sweets that only had more than like 500 calories as a snack, you know. So it was just so I didn't need to eat as the volume, and I could just get the maximum amount of calories. So that was like I would say the calories that I would need so I wouldn't waste away. And then for the rest of it, it was just quite like it was quite a normal diet, really. It was just like pastas and like bolognese, avocados, eggs, and everything. And I actually, I did in this process look for sponsorship from like a varied subject, like so some sports nutrition and clothing and shoes and what have you. And one of them was sports nutrition. And I was like, I'm really going to have to focus on sports nutrition because I I weighed at the beginning like around 68 kilograms and I lost like 5 kg in the first week of running.
Wow.
So I was like, damn, I'm really going to have to get on top of this. But it didn't come through in the end for sports nutrition. So I was just like, you know what? As just a complete interest for me, I'm just going to see what it feels like to just fuel only on like real food.
Mm.
And actually, the surprise and the winner of my event was actually eating these small little sausages. I ate these sausages like I would a gel, like on a race day. There wouldn't be a day where I was running without like 10 sausages like on my bag. And actually, it worked great for a protein snack, but also a fatty snack as well,
Yeah.
which I really did need. And I would balance it off with the carbs back in the van. The kit, I would always have a vest which had a rain jacket, one like sort of thermal layer, and also one kind of like bungee sports tape of some description. So if one of my knees went or whatever, or I needed to patch something up, then I could do it straight away. But that was like my that was in my bag always.
Did you notice your body changing then, kind of as you went through the race? How did your body change?
Yeah, well, it's funny because if you see pictures from day one and to day like 90 plus, like there is a big difference. And that very much comes from my arms. First of all, that's the most noticeable. Like my arms turn into these little chicken wings, which is quite funny. Um, yeah, and I think some just like face change happened as well. But I also grow a beard as well. So that kind of like
Very
offset.
Forrest Gump, very Forrest.
Yeah, that kind of like offset the whole weight loss in my face because before when I ran the 200K like a few years ago, it was very noticeable that I dropped a lot of weight and that came from my face, but the beard has kind of like created an illusion.
So what motivated you to get up every morning with the aches and the pains? What mindset did you have to put yourself in each morning?
Yeah, well, I think visually, the way I can paint the picture the best way is the famous scene from Kill Bill, the wiggle your big toe. Like that was basically every morning situation. Like I had to sleep diagonally in my bed because it was the only way I could stretch out straight. And I would just kind of work my way from my toes, like through my feet into my calves, into my thighs. And it was just always really rough. Like every morning was very challenging. It really was painful. And it was just, I would just swing my legs out and put on my slides and get out the van, go and take a nature poop. Like that was just a part of like what had to be done. But every time I got back to the car, I'd already walked maybe 20 meters. And actually, by that point, my body was ready to kind of like go again.
Mm.
But I would say the best mental motivator the whole way through this is like, I've got this dream to go to Antarctica and I'm very set on this dream. And I'm a big believer in words and someone who says things out loud. I mean them. And it takes me a while to actually bake an idea. Like if I've said something to someone, I've spent weeks thinking about it before I say it out loud. And I think the world nowadays is so everyone's just throwing stuff out into the open, and sometimes maybe they're not grounded enough with the idea. But Antarctica is something it just will happen. Like there's that is my life goal, you know, and that plays a big part in getting up every morning. You know, like I'm in bed and everything hurts, and then I just ask myself, you know what, Jake, like how much do you want to go to Antarctica? Like, is this an opportunity for you to learn to get on top of your goal and step like another step closer to Antarctica? And I'm like, yeah. And then I just have to get out of bed.
Amazing. What was
Yeah.
some of your you passed through, two almost diametrically opposite places as you've got, beautiful highlands and the coldness of Norway and then beautiful hot Spain. What was some of your favorite things that you saw between the two?
Um, I think because I when I was planning the concept for this run, I didn't want it to be a solitary event. Like that was really one of the biggest focus. I was like, how can I make this inclusive for people? How can people join me in some way? So I wore a GPS tracker at all times, which was on and online, which is also very strange. Like to be able to be tracked at any point to like within like 5 meters is a weird thing to do, just period.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was something that invited people that I would never have ever have got to meet otherwise. And I got myself into like weird situations where people found out about our run on Instagram and people would just find us they would drive over to us somehow and just they'd be like, I can't run with you, but I just want to offer you anything. Like, what do you need? Like, what is it that can help you with? And I'm like, oh, I think we're all right. And they're like, oh, you probably need your washing doing. And we were like, oh, actually, we do need our washing doing. And they just took everything from our car and just drove off with all of our washing. And I was like, well, first of all, I hope he comes back because he's
Yeah.
got all my gear. Uh, and and then he obviously came back and I think those human moments were probably like above from the obvious, like, oh, you ran in Norway, how was that? I was just completely sidelined by the amount of generosity from people. You know, I finished a run outside someone's house and I was exhausted. And the last thing I wanted to have is another shower from our van because it was at the time we even had to run the hose outside the window and shower outside naked, you know, and it was cold. And I literally just stood in front of someone's house waving the Norwegian flag until they came outside. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? And I was like, look, I told them the story and I just said, I just really would love a hot shower. And they gave us one, they invited us in, they gave us dinner and everything. So I think just the human side of it was the most beautiful part.
Amazing. That's such a lovely story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, I think we're nearly done. Um, what was your final day like? You're almost there. You're in those final stages. Was there a little bit of relief, or was it more kind of, oh my gosh, it's finished? Like I'm gonna miss this.
Yeah. I like many ultra distance runners, I think there's always a little bit of a anticlimax at any of the race finishes. I think that it's something that I think a lot of us have gone through for sure, and especially on the even bigger ones. Sometimes you have this dream of like crossing a finish line, and it be like, whoa, like I'm finished, it's amazing. But actually, like you get to the end and you're completely fried and like you just kind of like give me the medal. You just sit down on a something, and I have to say it was very similar. You know, I the target was to get to the south of Spain, but really what I wanted to do was connect with people, share the run with people, try and do something bigger than I'd ever done before. So I was focused really more on like the daily successes and the daily like beauty. So the end, honestly, I just kind of like we made like a red ribbon for me to cross through to some random people. I crossed the line, and my crew, my girlfriend actually was there at the end. And we just kind of high-fived, and I was like, right, well, should we get a cocktail? So that was the end really, you know, and I still was kind of in go mode almost. So when we stayed the night at the hotel, the next morning when I woke up, I was still kind of a bit in routine. I woke up and I was like, oh, right, like what have we got to do? And so yeah, it was a beautiful moment, but it was also a reminder that actually like the work that I did to put into the event and the event itself was actually a bit more compelling than the end, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The journey itself was the beauty of it. The ending was
Yeah.
just the ending. So how far did you cover in the end?
So my
What was
coffee machine was making noises over there.
it's okay.
Say again.
Um, what was your final distance in the end? How far did you cover and how many days did it take you?
Yeah, so my event was 5,660 kilometers, which I completed in 94 days.
Wow.
This route was modeled from a popular bike packing route that goes pretty much in a completely straight line from the tip of Norway all the way through to the south of Spain. This Because of its biking popularity, I wanted to do something slightly different.
Mm.
And I wanted to hug the Norwegian coast and actually see Norway because the bikepacking route doesn't go through Norway. So I was like, I really want to see Norway. It's more distance. It actually is several days difference. But I mean, you might as well just add it to the list at this point because you're out for so long. So actually, I accidentally set a route record whilst I was on my event, which was awesome. It wasn't my like goal or mission, but I think that's quite a nice thing to come out with as well.
Definitely, you'll be inspiring more people to take on. You see so many things of like transcontinental or the John O'Groats to Land's End, and it was the first
Yeah.
time that I've seen this route, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that you could do that. It was quite an eye opener for me. I was like, oh, of course of course they're connected. Like that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
hopefully this.
Also, Yeah, also like Norway, when you look at Norway against England, because England is always my measurement of like how big is something or like whatever. But when you see England against Norway, you just realize how absolutely enormous Norway is, you know?
Mm,
So we were traveling I was like, because my parents live in Newcastle. And I was like, oh yeah, soon we're gonna be like vertically aligned with Newcastle. I was like, yeah, yeah, soon we will be. And then it was like a week went by, and I'm like, we're still not there yet. And another week went by, and I'm like, we're still not there yet. Like, how big is this country? You know?
wow. So what's next then? How's your recovery been and what you kind of working towards in the future?
Um, yeah, I think I obviously have this plan for Antarctica,
Mm,
right? So I have to fill the gaps in between what I've done now and Antarctica, which is more Arctic events. So I'm going to focus more again on Arctic stuff, maybe in the north or the south. I'm not sure which one yet. But I think one piece of feedback that I got on this run, especially, is that I, at least on the outside, made the run look kind of easy. Like I just kept going back day after day after day. And in some way, I guess it might have looked like that. And I experienced quite a lot of pains that I had to endure, of course, but like I had this vision and everything that was holding me up. But I now realize that I think I was also really holding something back as well. So I wasn't really like fully taking in the pains. I was holding them at bay almost. And when I got back to Amsterdam, I had some paperwork to finish. I had a car to give back from the rental place and everything. And that was still a part of my plan. So we drove home from Spain. We dropped the car off. And as soon as I dropped the car, just I had this like complete collapse of like everything, like mentally, physically, everything. Just like I was in pain all of a sudden, my back hurt, like I was tired, like really, really tired. So my recovery, honestly, since I've been back, has been either on the sofa, which is just there, or on my bed, doing absolutely nothing, like zero. So
good.
sleep really has been helpful.
Yeah. So you're just aiming now straight for Antarctica, maybe some bits and pieces. You
Yeah,
should
people.
go up to Svalbard.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Svalbard. I actually went there last year on it was a 12-day winter expedition.
Yeah.
And I went there just to train and get an understanding of it. But because I want to do documentary films, organizing a documentary film in Svalbard is very expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just basically need to find sponsorship that allows me to make a film and do an event in Svalbard.
Amazing. Well, I wish you
Yeah,
so much luck with that. I'll definitely be looking out for you in the future. Where
nice.
can people find you on social media?
Yeah, well, I mostly use Instagram and TikTok. They're both my name, so Jake Catterall. And I'm actually just posting a lot about my how I'm feeling after the event. So if anyone's listening to this, then like right now I'm doing a lot of like how is it going? And yeah, actually just really relishing in the fact that I ran across an entire continent. Like that is something I'm very proud of.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for coming on with me. I've really, it's been great talking to you. I've had a lot of fun.
Thank you. You too.